Any other quizzes out that I'm missing? So, you should put your computers away. You have something to take notes with. This guy. So, there weren't primary elections until the 20th century. So these people are not. The Republicans are not asking their voters who they want to president. He's not president. He's not even a candidate yet. But in the early 1860, he gave a particular speech for Virginia, which is in New York. And among the other things that he said, which was that the South should not be permitted to prevail on every issue. They don't get the final word on everything, which is how he sees it. And a lot of people saw this. This was slave power. The South always seems to get its way. This was published by this point in 1860. Everyone knows who Lincoln is. He also, as I pointed out, he condemned John Brown, and he would emerge as the moderate Republican candidate at the convention when he is chosen to be the candidate of the party. He's nobody's first choice, and everyone's second. There were three factions within the party, and each one of them had a different candidate they had in mind. The other two-thirds were always in a disagreement with the third who was proposing the candidate. And so while they're having these discussions, the one thing that they all agree on is, well, as a compromise, we can all back him because he's everyone's second. So they decide they're going to back him. There was nobody's first choice. There was great disagreement over the first choices. And yeah, there are a number of people that come up. He's the guy who did it. So in that election, you might remember I told you when we looked at 1858 that the Republicans recognized, or the 1856 election, they recognized they needed to win Illinois and they needed to win Pennsylvania. And in 1860, the Republican Party was actually banned from the ballot on all the southern states. If you were a slave state, you didn't even permit the Republicans to be on the ballot. Which means he's only on the ballot in the states that vote for him. And he won all of them. But it's a four-way race. You'll notice he gets 40% of the popular vote. Okay? So he doesn't have the full support. The electoral vote, very much the same. What's interesting is what's happened to the Democrats. They split into three warring factions. One of them is his nemesis, Stephen Douglas, who is basically leading what becomes the Northern Democratic Party. Remember that Freeport doctrine? The only people who will support him are essentially Northern Democrats. If you look at the popular vote, you see that he does the second best. Although if you look at the electoral vote, it doesn't matter. Look how bad he does. So the electoral vote, about 30%, almost 30% for him. But he only actually wins Missouri and then a couple of electoral votes from New Jersey, because New Jersey actually split its electoral votes. The states have the right.
Well, under
it may now. Is that what you're asking? It may now. A number of states actually split them now. And we'll see in some later elections the way some of the states actually break out. You can get some strange Well, because remember the way the electoral college works, if you get, let's take Illinois, if you get 50% plus 1, you get all 11 of the delegates, even though you only won 50% plus 1. If you win 90%, you still get 11 delegates. So what New Jersey does is they come up with some proportion that says if you get this much, you get this many of electors. And if you get this percentage, you get the other electors. So that's how it came out. But the Democrats are also divided into two other ones. The Southern Democrat Breckinridge, you'll see he wins the entire, what's going to become the Confederacy. The whole thing goes for Breckinridge. That's only 18% of the popular vote, but 24% of the electoral vote. And then the Constitutional Union Party, which in some respects, arguably, is actually pulling from Douglas's Northern Democrats. They do the worst with the popular vote, and the electoral vote breaks down almost evenly. Geographically, it looks like they're doing much better because they get all over the close. So Lincoln is going to win as a minority candidate, which means that he doesn't really have popular support. So he does really well across the north. So there's well, I'll show you this. There's a the Republicans are actually on a platform of protected tariffs. Remember this idea: you tax competition from abroad, you tax the goods in order to protect your producers at home. That's anti-free trade. They want free homesteads. What's that? Free homesteads?
Or give land away to people.
So that you can, so there's land available, and if you move there and you develop it, which means you're living there for some time, and you prove that you've been working there, they'll give you title to the land. Students are always surprised by this, but you can still do this. There are remote areas that you can still do it. Montana and Alaska. There may be some space in Wyoming too, and possibly Idaho that I don't know about. But I know those two states. But I am warning you though, you're talking about really, really remote places. My stepfather actually, he pulled out a map one time and he showed me all of the blocks that were set aside for homesteading that are still available. Quite a few. And there is, if you look it up on Google, you can actually see the homestead title is actually a PDF file which you can download and fill it out in order to claim parcel claim. As I said, it's really remote. The other thing though, if any IMSA student ever takes up my offer, you have to name the town that you're living in, Hannah. Hannah, Montana.
I want to die. Oh my god, that's so stale and old that I want to die.
There's a George Washington. It's right in the middle of the state, right on the Columbia River. And not only that, they have a big concert venue there, so they can get people from Seattle and from Spokane, because it's right in the middle, like a couple of hours, and so people go watch their concerts there in the summer. They call the concert venue the Gorge. The Gorge in George Washington. I know.
I'm just gonna make like another.
Okay, so the 43 homestead. They are also pushing for that Pacific Railroad, the Transcontinental Railroad. The problem they had is the interference. The Southerners always wanted to go to the south. They'll eventually be able to get that. And this is really important. They're pushing for the rights of immigrants. Now, that's not just ironic because of the Republican Party in 2017. That's really interesting because the Republicans in the 1860s, in order to get Lincoln elected, had to reach out to all of the know-nothings, the American Party, who were anti-immigrant. And so in 4 short years, from 1856 to 1860, these people decided that the slavery issue is so important to them that they're going to vote for Republicans and then abandon their own party. So that's kind of a big deal. They're also going to declare, again, going back to the Lincoln and Douglas party says, the normal condition of all territory in the United States is freedom. And they deny the ability of Congress or a territorial legislature or any individuals to be legal existence of slavery in any territory of the U.S. They're against popular sovereignty. Okay, as a platform of the party. Which takes us to my next question. So I asked you also for today, read King Cotton. Tell me about it. Cameron, yes.
Well, the South was basically comparing their slaves to the industry workers in the North and saying they were basically the same thing, but the slaves were better.
That incidentally, that comparison is going to upset the workers in the North, who are actually going to use it against their bosses. They're like, look, they're comparing us to the slaves in the South. I think you need to pay us better. No, actually true. They're going to do this.
He said that he saw like a bunch of people like in New York like homeless like begging and stuff. And then it happened like through the
Right, now, of course, Hammond's exaggerating. Yes, okay, yeah, but they're still slaves. The northern arguments can be about free soil. Well, free labor is always superior to slave labor, and ultimately the workers are going to say, yes, we are superior to slave labor, but you also need to pay us more, and you need to treat us better. And we shouldn't have, and so there's going to be this kind of three-way fight where the northern workers, in fact, are going to play off this as well. How does he perceive the place of the South within the American economy? Yeah. He gives you some figures, and he says, don't you people realize how important we are to you? In which way can you make that argument? Yeah. Well, yeah, I think that's what he says. Why does he think cotton is so important? Let me back up. Do you remember the graph I showed you, and it had like several different categories? We see like total population. North has 85% of the industry, the factories, 2/3 of the railroads. Remember that? And I told you all of that is true. So the North is clearly producing more. Okay, but what if I told you this is also true? In 1860, at this time, 51, 52%, that is a majority of the exports from the United States, were accounted for by cotton production. So cotton is responsible for a majority of what the country is actually selling to other countries. That was actually true. So couldn't Hammond say that cotton is king and is more important than anything going on in the North? How do we get the two sets of data to actually make sense? How can the North be producing so much, at the same time the South is actually responsible for all the exports? Because, here's a contemporary example, China is the world's leading producer of steel. China is also the world's leading consumer of steel. Because they're consuming so much, they're producing everything that they actually produce, so they don't actually use it. So you have this, the American economy in the North, they're producing so much stuff that they're actually consuming a whole lot of it. The only thing left to actually be shipped overseas in the majority is the cotton from the South. So Hammond has the problem that he's only seeing that production of cotton, and he's not seeing the big picture. And this is the same problem the South is going to have when South Carolina says, oh, by the way, we're leaving. How are they going to feed themselves? All of the food production is in the Midwest. How are they going to put together a military? 85% of the factories are in the North. How are they going to move things around? They don't have a whole lot of railroads, and what they do have is a bunch of different gauges. But Hammond is like, no. Cotton is king. Cotton is so important. You don't realize how important the South is to this economy. And the North, their position is, yeah, we do know how important you are. Not very.
You sound like my parents.
So when Lincoln actually wins in November, the South had already warned the North that if they elect Lincoln, that it's going to be trouble. And so in December, South Carolina actually announces that it is seceding. Now this is the same state that gave us the nullification crisis back in the 1820s, where they said, well, we don't like that a federal law, so we're going to ignore it. And Jackson threatened to send in the troops. So what happened then? Well, there are a couple of things, I'm going to talk about this in a moment. There are a couple of things to keep in mind. One is that Lincoln isn't president yet. He's not inaugurated until March. The president is a guy named Buchanan. Some people consider him the worst president ever. I will, yeah, right. I will withhold the judgment. I'm not gonna weigh in. But anyway, Buchanan is the guy who's in charge at the time. The Congress, however, when are the congressional elections? In what month? Huh? November. Here's the thing.
What is up at 3-year lag period?
This is, oops, November. That's 1 year. These people who are elected here don't take office for 13 months. That's not how we do it now. And we refer to that period between the Congresses as the lame duck period. These people have already lost their election, but they're still in office. The lame duck in the 19th century is 13 months long, which means the president is coming in here in March, and you have a president working with a lame duck Congress for the rest of the year. You'll see this play out actually in the Lincoln movie when we get there. They're going to talk about, oh, they won the 1864 election by a landslide, and in December we'll be able to get stuff done. Here they are talking in 1865, right? They have to wait a long time. That kind of situation also obviously creates a different relationship between the executive branch and the legislative branch, because it's not like the parties can just kind of make things happen.
What was the purpose of the
Well, there are a couple practical things. Consider California in my map. How easy is it without a transcontinental railroad for a representative in California? Actually, we have 4 representatives and 2 senators, 6 of them have to get all the way across the country. Like Forrest Gump.
Yeah.
Not easy. A lot of mountains in your way too. That's a really long trip and can only be done at certain times of the year. Then there's, so there is a kind of practical issue. Why they decided it to be so, I don't have a good answer. All I know is that there is a practical problem, especially as the country gets bigger, of actually trying to get across the country. So people do need that. Not all, but the Virginians dominate the presidency and the Supreme Court throughout the 19th century.
Like, if Lincoln won by like 12 votes, like, the majority of like electoral votes are from the north, so how did the South get their like the North has like
Well, they had been, but not in 1860. Lincoln was saying the South had kept getting its way, which was true, until he's elected that November, and then we get the first Republican president, who is Lincoln. And they had a specific set of things that they wanted to achieve. And I'm going to talk about the faction too.
Did like the Whigs in the South join the Democrats?
So the Whigs initially become Republicans, but I'm going to tell you what happens here. So Lincoln, with his election, he reiterates two things that he had been saying all along. One is that the extension of slavery is not negotiable. Following the Republican Party platform, the territories will not permit slavery. That's their position. Now, the other part of it is not abolitionist. It says where slavery exists, it can remain. It just cannot go any further. Now, the problem is someone like Hammond, when they hear that, they conflate things. They're like, well, okay, you're saying non-extension of slavery, therefore you're coming for our slaves. And Lincoln is like, no, I'm not coming for your slaves, you're saying you can't bring them to the new territory. You're coming for our slaves. No, I just said you can go to the new territories. You're coming for our slaves. This is like, you take your old 60-year-old uncle who's a staunch Republican of another era, and you say Democrat, and he thinks you said communist. Okay? And like, you can't get it through his head that there's actually a difference. This is the same thing that's going on. They're like, no, I said you can't extend slavery. And they're like, so you're coming for our slaves. No, it's not what I said. There you go. So, anyway, and the other part that he insists is that the union is permanent. You don't just leave, because if you leave, then every time that someone has a disagreement, the whole thing breaks up. The grassroots Republicans, these would be people who are not party officials, but the voters, the people who were behind Lincoln, the voters. They are opposed to compromising on anything. As far as they're concerned, when he said the South should not be allowed to prevail in every instance, as far as they're concerned, that means don't compromise with them. So the country becomes very polarized. A bunch of former Democrats who became Republicans over this issue, like they couldn't bring themselves to actually support Douglas or to vote for Bell. And so they're now Republicans. They're actually even more angry. They want to punish the South because they're upset at the way this has destroyed their party. Horace Greeley, who's the editor of the New York Tribune and sided with the abolitionists, and he's kind of a voice, he says, you know what? Let them leave. I have no particular loyalty to the union. If they want to leave, they solve the problem. We don't have slavery anymore. And nobody has to die in the process. And more importantly, we no longer have to worry about the fugitive slave law because they left the country. Which means now, if the slaves escape, they will give them, amnesty. They actually see this as, let them go, let them break apart the country, it's fine. But this is obviously not what Lincoln was elected to do, and so he says, no, the union has to stay here. Then you had another group. We tend to think of the business community as being very conservative, but we have to be careful how we use the term conservative. They don't like uncertainty at all. They like to know how the economy is going to be down the road. They want to be able to plan for things. They don't like disruptions in supply lines, in consumption. They like to have a predictable environment. And for them, a civil war is going to be really, really disruptive. So their position is, we need to compromise. Obviously, they're in a different place than, say, the grassroots Republicans. As it turns out, of all of these positions, you want to guess whose position wins? Nobody wants to guess. The business community wins. So the Congress is going to make a bunch of compromises. In December, they introduce all kinds of things, including 17 constitutional amendments. 17. There were only 12 at that time. One of the compromises they offer is to bar suffrage, that is, citizenship and voting of all Black Americans, including free ones, in order to appease South Carolina. So basically, Frederick Douglass, oh yeah, that's all fine. You don't have any rights anymore. We're taking them away. That's what the South wants. Seward, who is the Secretary of State, you'll see him in the Lincoln movie. He's he's the right-hand man. He was seen as a guy you can reliably expect to be anti-slavery. And he, as in the course of this discussion, actually offers New Mexico as a new slave state in order to, again, appease the South. When he does this, a bunch of people are like, oh my God, the slave power even has consumed Seward. This is terrible. Even Seward is beyond, he's supposed to be beyond reproach, and the slave power got to him. And this is why people were saying, no, don't compromise with them. You can't compromise with these people. They want everything. And they want, all kinds of things that should be given. So the result is Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, and Texas, in a matter of a couple of weeks, all leave the country. And then they're going to, in February, set up their own government with South Carolina. That's not the end of things. It's only the beginning, but the compromises don't work. Secession follows. Yeah, I have that on another slide. Virginia's good. Now, I told you, Buchanan is actually still the president, and the Congress that's in office is going to be lame duck actually through the year. South Carolina, though, by leaving, actually has federal territory within its borders now, because Fort Sumter is there. And so the federal government now has a problem that its troops are stranded in hostile territory, and they need to resupply the fort. So in February, the South Korean government, their new constitution is going to be just like the one that they had just left, except it emphasizes states' rights, the way the Articles of Confederation did. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess depending on what you here, as it turns out, they end up with the same problems the Articles of Confederation had. They can't get the Confederate states in the South to actually pay for the war. All the problems that they have in the state autonomy is that nobody wants to follow any kind of guidance from the central government, and it's exactly not what they need in Washington. Also, that month, the South actually seizes federal forces. Buchanan wasn't who was actually a Southerner himself, but he wasn't allowed to use the force. And there was some exchange of fires with the Southerners, but the war isn't really considered underway quite yet. Lincoln's inaugurated on March 4th, and he goes and once again says what he is going along, accepting. He also says he's hoping to still resolve the crisis. He's offering a very reconciliatory, language. Well, that doesn't work either. So in mid-April, there's a draft. The way it worked, if you had enough money, you could buy your way out of the draft. And then you send some poor guy off to take their place. Where very likely they died in bloody battle, because this was the bloodiest war of any that the U.S. has ever been involved in. raises an arm. Virginia in April. You asked me? So Virginia is going to leave in April. The interesting thing that we're showing on the next map is that they decided to make the capital of the Confederacy Richmond, which really looks pretty stupid because it's not that far from Washington, D.C., which is the capital of the other government. In May, we're going to get Arkansas, end of May, North Carolina, and then, so they're going to join the Union. And in June of 1861, you're going to, and this is the lame duck Congress, right, that's overseeing this. They're going to carve out the section of Virginia where people were sympathetic to the North. And they're going to create West Virginia. They actually, it was intentionally based on the counties and the way that people voted. They're like, well, we know these people will support us, so we're going to cut it right there. They probably should have called it North Virginia because Virginia itself actually goes further west than West Virginia, but it was the western half, so they kind of. And then you'll see that there are still a few more in June. Tennessee joins the Confederacy, but there are a few border states, Missouri, Kentucky, Maryland, which do stay in the country. So it looks like this. Here's for something in April. And then Delaware and Maryland are also slave states. And then West Virginia, Missouri. Not much is going to happen, really, in Texas. Most of the Western Front is going to involve this area here, control of the Mississippi, and there will be a Northern Front in Virginia.
Since Maryland was a place
No, that had been ended in 1804.
So like everywhere else in Maryland?
Yes. The slave trade had been ended in the early 19th century as part of
So what happens if
No, they won't be set free if they just show up there. That was the argument of the Dred Scott case.
So, Missouri and Kentucky and West Virginia and other states, they were slave states, but like they didn't move to Union. Why didn't they?
They didn't because they were not necessarily as interested in this issue of they didn't see secession as a way that was really going to resolve any issues. They also are not. These are people when you say to them, "We're not taking your slaves," they're like, "Oh, okay, fine." They're not interested in causing as much of a ruckus as this. And West Virginia, there are almost no slaves there. I mean, that was the thing. I mean, these are people who are against slavery, but they're also not taking slaves. Kentucky was a mix too, because this is the place Lincoln is from. Yes, there were slaves, but generally these people didn't like slaves very much. And that's why they moved up to the north in the first place. Kentucky still has a bunch of people who just couldn't afford to move. And so there are a lot of people living in those territories who don't have slaves. And so they're not as invested in the issue. So yes, there were some slaves, but they don't have the political will to actually leave. I will pick it up from here when I see you.